Hey guys, I got another interesting story from Reddit. I think you guys will enjoy it. So he opens his post with, "I'm a 32-year-old male. I work in marketing, and this is the story of how my boss spent 3 years putting his name on my work, and how the day he finally got caught was a day I had been quietly planning for a long time. So I joined this mid-sized marketing agency fresh out of college, and I was hungry to prove myself. And I worked harder than anyone else in that office, like I was the first one in and the last one out, and I genuinely loved the work. And I thought, if I just kept my head down and delivered results, the right people would notice. And for the first year, I really believed that was true. My direct boss was a man named Richard, and on the surface, he was everything a manager should be: well-dressed, well-spoken, confident in meetings, the kind of person who always seemed to know the right thing to say at the right time. And when I first started, he was warm and encouraging and told me I had real talent and that he was going to make sure the right people saw it. And I trusted him completely because I had no reason not to. About 8 months in, I put together a full campaign strategy for one of our biggest clients. I spent weeks on it, did the research, built the decks, ran the numbers, and Richard presented it to the senior leadership team while I waited outside the conference room. And when he came out, he shook my hand and said I had done great work, and that he had made sure to highlight my contribution in the room. And I went home that night feeling like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. About a month later, I was in the break room, and one of the senior directors walked past me and barely acknowledged me. And I remember thinking that was strange, because we had always been friendly. And then, a few weeks after that, I put together another major proposal, and again, Richard presented it, and again, I waited outside. And this time, when he came out, he seemed distracted and said it went well and moved on quickly. And something small in the back of my mind started paying attention. I started asking Richard directly after presentations if he was mentioning my name in the room, and he would always smile and say, "Of course," and give me some vague detail about what was said. And I had no way to verify it, so I just kept working. But the feeling that something was off wouldn't go away. So I started keeping a very detailed record of everything I produced. Every strategy, every deck, every campaign concept. I dated everything and saved every version and kept copies on a personal drive at home. And at the time, I told myself I was just being organized. But looking back, I think some part of me already knew. The moment I knew for certain came about 18 months in, when I was pulled into a meeting with a senior partner I had never spoken to directly before, and he was going over a campaign I had built from scratch, and he kept saying things like, "Richard really knocked it out of the park with this one," and "This is exactly the kind of thinking Richard brings to the table." And I just sat there with a completely neutral expression and said nothing. And when I got back to my desk, I opened my personal drive, and I just stared at the files. Richard had not mentioned my name once. Not in that meeting, not in any of the others. He had been standing in front of senior leadership for 18 months, presenting my work as entirely his own, and collecting the credit, the praise, the salary increases, and a bonus I later found out about, while I was sitting outside conference rooms being told I was being recognized. I want to be clear about what I did next because it matters. I did not confront him. I did not go to HR. I did not tell a single person in that office what I knew. Instead, I kept working exactly as I always had. I kept producing the same quality of work. I kept being on time and professional and pleasant. And I kept adding to my personal drive. And I started doing one extra thing, which was quietly building a relationship with a few of the senior people in the company by finding small, legitimate reasons to interact with them directly on projects. Over the next year and a half, I made sure that certain senior people had seen my name on at least a few things. Not in a way that would tip Richard off, but in a way that planted a seed. And I put together the single best piece of work I had ever done, a full brand repositioning strategy for our agency's largest account. And I gave it to Richard to present as usual. But this time, I had done something different. Because the night before the presentation, I sent a brief email directly to the senior partner who ran that account, saying, I just wanted to flag a few supporting documents for tomorrow's session. And I attached 3 key sections of the strategy, with my name clearly on every page. The presentation happened, and apparently it went extremely well, and the senior partner was impressed. And at the end, he asked Richard a fairly detailed question about one of the sections, and Richard fumbled it, Not badly, but enough to be noticeable. And the senior partner mentioned that he had received some documents directly from me the night before and asked if I could come in and walk through my thinking. And Richard's face in that moment was described to me later by someone who was in the room as a man who had just realized something had gone very wrong. I went in and I walked through every section with complete confidence because I had built every single word of it, and I could answer every question without hesitating. And by the end of that meeting, the senior partner was looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time. And then he asked me directly how long I had been developing this kind of work, and I looked at him and said, 3 years. And he looked genuinely surprised, and I let that surprise sit in the room. What followed over the next few weeks was a quiet internal investigation that I was not officially part of, but was very much the reason for. And when the company started looking into project records and comparing presentation content against internal documents, it became clear very quickly that Richard had been misrepresenting the source of the work for years, and he was let go within the month. I was called into a meeting with 2 senior partners and offered Richard's position at a significantly higher salary. And I sat across from them and I thought about that first presentation, standing outside a conference room at 23, believing I was being seen. And I took a breath and I accepted the offer, and then I asked for 10% more than they offered because I knew they needed me, and they gave it to me without pushback. He ends his post with this: "People ask me if I feel bad about how it ended for Richard, and honestly, I don't lose any sleep over it, because he didn't take credit for my work once by accident. He did it for 3 years on purpose, and the only thing I did was make sure the truth had somewhere to land." That last line is the one, because the whole story is not about revenge. It is about patience and precision, and knowing that the truth only needs one clean moment to come out, and that if you build toward that moment quietly and carefully, it will come. And if you have ever been in a room where someone else was taking credit for everything you built, just know that what this guy did is possible. And it starts with keeping records and keeping your mouth shut until the time is right. Drop it in the comments if this one hit you. I read every single one, and I'll see you in the next one.